building smart government solutions with AWS. So you've probably heard of a lot of like 200 plus services, features and services that AWS has, right? But then again, every time we mention that to customers, when you've probably seen the slide where you have 200 plus services, right? Most customers would be asking, so how do we start, right? So which of those services do we actually use, or do we really need all of them, right? So this session will help you sort of get started to get over that question by going through a very focused set of requirements, customer requirements, and the solutions that we offer. So in particular, it's going to be government solutions. So as we go around ASEAN in my patch, we see a lot of requirements in different areas. In particular, smart transportation. If you've been to the Philippines, you know how bad the traffic is, and Indonesia as well. Smart documentation. Right. Again, going through like agency to agency, filling up forms, that continues to be a pain, right? And it's in our best interest to sort of make it easier for the citizens by offering solutions that would help out. And lastly, of course, is smart analytics, business intelligence, data warehouses, data lakes. These are not new, right? But we continue building on those sorts of solutions to even make it more useful. Right, so together with me here, Shazli.
Hi, my name is Shazli. I'm a solutions architect as well from the ASEAN region.
Yeah, so Shazli is the more important person because he's going to show you the interesting stuff. So.
Yeah, so good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming to this session. So like what Dennis has said, we have so many services, but sometimes we need some help to focus into what projects that you want to start off with. So within us in the ASEAN Solution Architect community, we build different solutions that will actually cater to certain focus needs which we find in the field with other government agencies. The first of all is smart transportation. Across the region, there are countries where traffic is a challenge, and authorities and workers, they all need some help first in to gather data points to improve the transportation infrastructure. So we have a smart solution to actually monitor that. The second is smart document identification. So very much in some of these countries, documentation is still a manual process where we still need to have a physical ID and someone from the backend needs to fill out forms and key in data entry in that. So we will try to eliminate that and make things easier for everybody. And the last is smart data analytics, in the sense that governments has a lot of data and it comes from different sources. So we want to have an easier way of getting this data together and make something useful and get some useful insights from this data, right? So it's up to the first use case, which is smart transportation. Dennis?
Right, so smart transportation, as I mentioned, I probably move forward because I'm only 5'3", and you guys might not be able to see me with the podium. So smart transportation is something that you see in ASEAN countries, which is slowly becoming, it comes with the population growth, everyone buys cars, and smart transportation these are the things that a lot of government ministries and agencies are looking at, right? So there are a couple of challenges. You may have seen CCTVs, videos, and all, right? But what goes beyond that? Okay, I've collected all these videos, so what can I do after? Is it possible for me to get better insights from the videos that I've collected, right? And at the same time, the offerings are usually piecemeal. So why not come up with something that's end-to-end, meaning from the time that you were able to collect the data to the point that the decision makers are able to make insights or make decisions. And also, a lot of customers, in terms of challenges, they're not aware that technology is in fact available, right? Especially in the solution that we will be presenting, machine learning, it gets thrown a lot of times. And traditionally, it would take a lot of resources, a lot of specialization for people or customers to actually venture into machine learning. But that has changed, and not a lot of customers know that. When they hear about machine learning, oh no, I'm going to spend a lot of resources and hire specialists to be able to do this. But later on, we will show you that that's no longer the case. And of course, as I've mentioned, it's executive decision. It takes a lot of time. You throw them a lot of Excel sheets, videos, and then the decision makes it, okay, what do I do with that, right? So there has to be a way to translate all this raw data and give them to the decision makers in real time, right? Gone are the days where well, it's not gone yet, but you do have batch processes where you wait for a report either monthly, daily, right? But when the need arises that you need to make quick decisions, that's where technology actually goes in. And hopefully Shazly would be able to show or be able to alleviate the challenges that customers have.
Yes, thanks, Dennis. So what we have come up with, and this is a solution which you can see upstairs in our solutions architect booth. We are leveraging the AWS services, mainly machine learning. So machine learning where, we can automate mundane tasks and things that humans do and give it to a machine and let them do easier. The other technology we leverage is serverless solutions. So if you heard about things like Lambda, DynamoDB, where you don't need to manage the infrastructure, you don't need to provision them, you don't need to patch them or harden them. It is all done for you in the backend. So it makes it easy for you to just focus on your application and just improve it and give the best product the citizens require. With serverless comes more advantages, especially automatic scaling based on usage. So when the utilization is up, that's when you start to provision more resources to cater for all the workload, the traffic. When the utilization is down, then you actually start to scale down and you will actually get savings for that. So you don't have like wasted resources. It will all be, pay as you use. And finally, for our services to make use of that, sometimes you may need to do, you can do it on the console or you may do it in API or software development kit. We've created a web user interface that will make it easier for stakeholders to use it much more easier without knowing the backend technologies for that. Right?
Yeah, so machine learning and serverless. So Shazly, can you give examples how they in fact help our customers exactly? Because those words have been thrown a lot, right?
Yes, so machine learnings actually help customers to things that humans do, but you can automate it from let the machine do it for you, and especially serverless. You don't actually have to worry about infrastructure. And in the next demo, we can actually see some things like that, right? So in this demo, we are actually going to show what the user interface looks like. In this case, we are getting data from various sources, from social platforms, from different IoT sensors, and see what it is. So you see that there are the different columns, which is time and city, and the level. Lower number meaning that the traffic is not moving, and higher number meaning is smoother, right? So average speed and length. So in this example, we are looking at Indonesia. So the traffic situation there, and Denpasar, which is I think it's Bali, right? So it's one place where probably we would like to be there. So we can look at different items inside there in terms of which city, what street is it running on, the average speed, which is quite important. So like which road can be much more optimized, and how long is the road? Is it too long or is it too short, right? So if we go deep down and drill down into the interface, we can see different in points of interest. So if you see there, like there's the green points where it's actually a cluster of roads of interest. So basically we can see which roads that you want to concentrate on and focus on. And you can, the higher number, they will be a different color. So you can actually do a geolocation of how much attention you want that. In this case, one of them actually provides streaming CCTV video. So what we have used is we leveraged machine learning to actually identify cars, pedestrians, and other vehicles to see how many cars are actually there. So these are models which we can use object classification, or you also can train it on yourself. So basically, instead of someone actually eyeballing it and actually see how many cars are there, you can actually have the streaming video and do the vehicle count automatically for you. All right. So here we can see mainly is classification on cars. We can also see some which is pedestrians and some that are motorcyclists. Okay.
Right. So this actually demonstrates the end-to-end bit that Shazly mentioned earlier, right? So we have like mapping solutions, we have like CCTV, but it's putting it together.
Yes, and for the authorities, what they want to see is they want to see a high-level view of the situation. So we are leveraging our visualization solution, which is called QuickSight, which makes things much easier to connect your data and actually visualize it in less painful way. So you can have, so here we've come up with the high-level view of the traffic summary, see which are the times with the high traffic, what types of alert that you want, based on what type of vehicles are there, which are the busy hours, so that you can actually analyze when is, what the trends are, and you can actually take action on that. And if you want to drill down even more, QuickSight can actually do that in the sense that we can, here we can drill down and look for the past month and see how much traffic is in different areas of interest, which objects are there. So in this case, we want to see, which vehicles is mainly using the road. Is it cars? Is it motorcyclists? Is it pedestrians? And then we can drill down and we can see what time it's happening there. And then we can see what types of objects are in that particular street. So we can see where the persons and cars, there's even birds there, it's quiet. And then we can see at the particular street what sort of cars and traffic are in that particular area, right? So again, we try to give the different personas tools which they can make use for that particular use case, right?
Cool.
Yeah, so for the techies who want to see what's under the hood, this is what we have here, in case you want to build it together with us. So basically, let's go on left, which is my right. So we are taking two sources together. So one is we actually take data from popular social crowdsourcing platforms for traffic. So we use serverless, which is Lambda, and we actually schedule that with EventBridge. So EventBridge can be used for many things. In this case, we're using it as a scheduling solution. So it's like a cron. And then we put the raw data into S3. And then we use Glue, which is our ETL solution, to actually clean up the data, make it a bit more presentable, and then put it inside our data lake, which is on S3. On the right side, if you have traffic sensors, be it IoT devices, or even different vendors, they're using their own instances or other servers, we can also have it as an API gateway, and then we use Kinesis data Firehose. So if you think of streaming, it's actually Kinesis. So this will actually ingest data into the data lake. For the consumers, we have Athena. So if you want to do in-place queries, you use Amazon Athena. And QuickSight, as you saw, it gives that visualization. So the data will be much more easier to understand for authorities, right? And of course, SageMaker, if you want to create your own models, or if you want to import models, you can use Amazon SageMaker, right? Yes. So
Right. So I guess the diagram itself, just to reiterate, right? Everything was serverless, or mostly serverless. So the dashboard that you showed, I don't need to spin up or install patches, OS, BI tools. Cool.
Yeah. Right. So you don't need to go and see, what the vulnerabilities and go patches,
Okay.
service packs. So this was the advantages.
We
of
do the
service.
heavy lifting. Right?
Yes.
Cool. Right. So the next, topic is smart identification. And as I've mentioned, this is my experience going in different airports where you have to fill up a lot of forms, right? So of course in Singapore, you just go through, you scan your passport, it's good, right? But other airports, they don't do it that way. So we're trying to see how we can help out in those things, right? So instead of you wasting paper, time to go through immigration or whatever processes that you need to do, why not have technology do that for you? So the challenges that we have, there's a lot of manual processing. Right? I think that's true for national governments that I've seen. Paper-based work, I think that's, again, moving from paper to digital, and the government, or a lot of government agencies are going to that move. And again, unaware of having the technologies to be able to help out, right? So whenever we got customers, they're surprised, really, that can be done? So it's surprising, and we're here to actually help out that these technologies are now reachable, or these are things that customers can actually do. You don't need to hire experts, specialists, or special hardware to do so. And of course, fraud activity, right? So the more you automate, the more it becomes more transparent, right? So that's the objective of why we're putting in these sort of solutions.
Yes. So thanks, Dennis, for that. The challenges which travelers like us, we face all the time, or even like if for to do like basic like government services. So what we've done is we've actually have a solution that will identify government issued identifications. So things like national ID, driver's license, passport. For now, we are using the 5 countries with the vision of putting to more and more countries. And it's all using machine learning. Again, then it's machine learning. So taking the work out of humans into machines.
Okay.
So in this case, we are using 2 different types of machine learning methods. One is image-based identification. Why this is there is because if you see your identification, there's a background and there's logos there. So this will help to identify which country is it from. And the text-based identification, which actually extract the text out and get the relevant information of the person that they're submitting it. And last is a web-based application. Again, we've also tried to put the heavy lifting out of users, so you just have to go to the portal and actually use the application. Right? What it looks like is something like this. So very easy user interface. So you have the navigation page on the side, and then the actual identification on the center. On the right side, we actually included what sort of machine learning is used to identify that particular object. This can be removed if required, but this is to show what sort of what is under the hood in terms of machine learning analytics, right? So we're going to go through another demo, and basically we'll go through what we saw just now from a person's or user's point of view, right? So this is sign on. Again, this is also using Amazon service called Cognito when you sign in. And on the left, we have the information, the actual navigation bar from the home. And what I've also included is documentation. So if you need to know what it is, what is under the hood, how to use the application is there. You can feel free to change anything is available from us. So now we can go to the actual application itself. So it is a very basic interface where where is an icon to choose what file it is. On the right side, we will show what sort of machine learning models is used to identify this particular document. So basically, if it is an image-based, which is usually what country and what document it is, and the text-based, which is actually the actual data in that document to be extracted out, right? So let's just start, and we're going to upload a file. Again, this is not a real ID, obviously, but at least it shows how under the hood it will work. We will use an Indonesian national identification card. So it is actually has certain things. So NIK is Nombor ID Kartu, and the name. So once we've already previewed the document and this is the correct document, we will just identify the document, and it will be uploaded to Amazon S3, and then it will already do the classification. So inside the image classification, we can see it's actually an Indonesian identification. Confidence in 99.99%. So we're pretty sure it's actually from an Indonesian ID. The text also, we can actually use as sanity check to say that it's an Indonesian ID, and these are the extracted text from that particular ID, right? So you can actually pipe this and put this into another workflow to do maybe some gram processing, some application that will be much more automated, okay? So if you want to try with another ID, so we'll choose a Malaysian one. So this one, so we'll just preview again and just see what it will show us. So in this case, we'll just identify the document, and then we can see again 99% is a Malaysian ID and it's an IC card. All right. So that is.
Yeah, so Shazli, maybe some people are asking, so you did show an interface, right? And then you're going to describe the different services underneath, right? But if I were building my own tool or my own interface or portal, is it, do I need to use your interface or can I embed them and use them under the hood?
You can use your own interfaces. With everything is API based. We have the SDK available for you. And under the hood, if you want to get started, so good question in the sense that inside our architecture, if you see like the framework, there's an AWS Amplify Time SDK. This will help to set up the environment for you to create your web or mobile application. So if you have a React application, you can create that. On the right side, if you see AWS Amplify Hosting SDK, it will also help you to build the backend, things like, so above you see Cognito. So you can actually create that with Cognito, which is our web authentication service. And also if you need to host things like DynamoDB, which is a NoSQL type of database. So everything is fronted by an API gateway. We have different serverless services for you. So the first one is the one we actually upload the data into S3, which is a bucket. It also calls step functions, which is a workflow for all these microservices. And here it will call the different actions. So with the text identification, it will use TextTrack. With the image recognition, it uses SageMaker, which is using the image classification model. Then it will extract, and once it gets result, it will actually pop it into another Lambda function to present to you on your web portal. So again, these are all serverless, so basically you just worry about the code and we'll manage the heavy lifting for you.
Cool. Right. Yeah, so the last solution that we would want to present or demonstrate is like government analytics and dashboard. As I've mentioned earlier, government analytics or analytics and dashboarding, they're not really new. We have heard those terms before 5, even 10 years ago, right? But engaging a lot of customers before, a lot of vendors would probably approach customers, hey, this is a nice report, right? And they come out with like animations, features, and all, right? But usually the challenge is how do you actually bring a customer to that situation where they can have this nice facade, right? So they sort of skip the part that most of the data are actually siloed. So bringing them together, and it doesn't even stop there. Once you bring them all in, then you would have to reconcile, you'll have to map, you have to cleanse, you have to do profiling, right? So that's the heavy part. So what we are seeing in the dashboards and reports, it actually takes a lot of work to go through that. Because I even had an experience. I was working with the customer. It's a hospital. It's a group of hospitals. They have the same hospital system, but they interpret the tables and columns differently. So even the policies become different. Computing interest for one is different from the other. So the reconciliation part is really important. And I feel that's where customers would need some assistance in doing so. So that's the siloed part. And of course, there's no one size fits all kind of approach, right? So you might say, hey, I have this magnificent data warehousing, data lake appliance for you. You just plug it in and it works, right? So that's not what, in my experience anyway, that never has happened to me, right? So you put it in, it's like connecting and integrating the different data formats, protocols. Some are even coming from the mainframe. You have to extract and map that to JSON, XML, and stuff, right? So it's not like there's no single solution that can give you everything and answer all your needs, right? So that's what we're trying to address.
Yes, so thanks, Dennis. So what we've done is, this is a bit more basic in a sense that we are leveraging our native services. So we are using those services as is to help, reconcile this data, do all this data analytics for you. So, if you want to have data, move or join to another data set, you can actually do that relatively easier with the native tools or services that AWS have. The other thing is you can get unified governance with ability to authorize, manage, audit access to data. So as we know, data, especially government data, it is very important, sensitive, and access and auditing of this data is very important. So we leverage on certain services, such things as late formation, to give you that ability to govern the data, to give authorization, what sort of data they can have, which column they can have, or which row that they want to, they can actually access data, and audit to see, who has been accessing data, what query has they been doing, right? So this will make, governing those data sets much more effective. And what Dennis has said, is correct. There's very rarely there is one analytics tool that can analyze all the data. So we make use of different AWS services. If you want to do things like online analytic processing, we can do that with our data warehouse solution. If you want to do like online transaction, there's a database, relational database type solutions for you, time series, and unstructured data type analytics. So we use different services to fit their needs, and make it more fit for purpose. Right. So some of the principles of the data architectures is highlighted here. So we have data coming from different sources, mobile app, those things are unstructured data, things where it's not really inside a defined format. We also cater for things which are in defined format, relational databases. Those are the things that we can ingest as well, all right? And things like government institutions, sometimes even certain things, it is still paper-based. There is manual you need to fill up, like spreadsheets and things like that. So those are the things that you can ingest. So what we can do, we have tools to actually collect the data and also to ingest it. So ingest it in a sense that, we can actually transform the data to something much more useful and securely store it on AWS, all right? So you can actually make sure, whether it be short-term or long-term storage. And then we analyze the data that is important for you and present it in a much more user-friendly way. And the important part is the top, which is data governance. You want to make sure that you have control of your data and make sure that the people that are supposed to analyze data are the ones that analyze that data.
So speaking of data governance, when I mentioned earlier that customers buy this appliance and they feel that it will solve everything, so I guess you feel the pain, right? And true with data governance as well. A lot of customers go into data warehousing, data lakes, and put them all together. They do ETL, they do data, and then when they ask, is that secure? They don't have a specific answer to that because it comes as an afterthought. Right, okay, let's secure that later. Let's worry about security later because we just need to get the data correct, right? So data governance in the offerings that we have is actually comes with when you're building the solution. It's not only that, right? Availability as well. You put up a data warehouse, data lake, you ask the vendor, so okay, so I bought this big box. So what if it fails? Oh, Mr. Customer, you have to buy another one, unfortunately, right? So that's consideration that comes after. So when we're trying to build solutions in AWS, we consider security, availability, and scalability. So those are the important bits that is more of the heavy lifting, right? Because you can speak to data scientists and analysts about availability and security. Probably they won't be able to give you a good answer to that. Hence, on our end, we try to give it to the customers so that they don't have to worry about it and focus on them doing the analysis and the scientific bit of things.
Speaking of heavy lifting, we do more heavy lifting for the customers in the sense that we'll be talking about machine learning. So we've also integrated machine learning in our analytics services. So in the case of the pure machine learning engine, we have Amazon SageMaker that you want to create the models, you want to import the models, you want to test your models, whether they are accurate enough. But we've also starting to embed them to our different analytics services. And this is to cater for different personas. So for database engineers, if you want to use our relational database tool, which is Aurora, and Graph database has integrated machine learning. Our data, for data analysts, if you're using data warehouse like Redshift, and Athena for in-place SQL queries, we've also integrated machine learning for that. And also for business analysts with QuickSight Q. So basically, if you go to QuickSight and you can actually, chat and say, bring up this data, and it will bring up that particular data chart for you, right?
Right. So you've mentioned developers, data analysts, and business analysts. Because I'm trying to imagine those are different roles. So how does that look like?
Funny you should ask that, Dennis.
Of course.
So, because we actually cater for these different interfaces for these different roles. For the data analyst, data scientist, if you want to transform the data after you ingest it, you do a specific transformation, we have Glue Data Brew, which is here. For the business analyst, you have QuickSight, again, QuickSight dashboard, which not only provides dashboard, but it can actually email the reports for you. So you can actually have this to be sent to the stakeholders. Another interesting thing is for the citizens itself. So let's just say, I am a citizen, I want to get something like, in this case, it is actually a vaccination solution, where a citizen will actually request for vaccination certification. So instead of talking to someone, you talk to a chatbot, say, hi there, I'm this, and you provide your identification. In this case, we would require a government identification, and you can start chatting. And if something does happen, we can always ask for help and ask to talk to a real person, right? So this is leveraging our contact center solution, which is Amazon Connect, right?
Cool.
So let's just see this in action again. So we'll just see a video on that. So the first is Glue Data Brew. In this use case, what we want to do is we want to first get the latest vaccination date and join this data set to another data set, okay? So with Glue Data Brew, we can actually do this transformation visually, and it will come up with what we call a recipe. So basically, it will do all these steps for you. You just click it in a nice drag and drop way. So in the ID, we group the data, the columns in. We get the vaccination dates and compare which is the latest one, and this will get the latest vaccination date. So you have your vaccination report, and you also need to find out about the employee itself. So you want to join these different data sets together. So what we're doing is we're joining these two different sets together. So once we confirm which data set, then we can actually see what type of joining that you want to do. So in this case, we want to left join, and the main key that we want that's matched together is the employee ID, right? So once this is done and we're finished, we're going to get that particular recipe for this ETL. Okay, so if you see the recipe is there, and once we are satisfied, we can create a job, and this job can be done regularly. So every time a new data comes in, a new report comes in, when you ingest this, you can schedule this job automatically. Okay. Again, next is the QuickSight dashboard. So what we're seeing here, we can see a macro level or high level overview of this particular organization. Maybe it's a ministry. So we can see whether status, whether it's fully vaccinated, partially vaccinated, or half vaccinated, and we can see the cities and this vaccination status. So again, if you want to drill down even more, you can do it within the QuickSight interface, where here we can see, the employee ID, first name, last name, and the department. So again, this use case here is in Indonesia. So we just want to drill down. This is in the IT department who has been vaccinated. Which city. Again, Bali is the favorite one here, and we can actually drill down to the particular person to get the information from, right? So we can get this. As a stakeholder, you can actually use the interface to query the data itself. All right. And the last one is actually that chatbot interface. So here we want to request a vaccination certification. So we go to the portal and say, I want to download the vaccination report. So you put your last name and you put your first name in, your birth date, and then for verification, the email address to send the report to. So for verification, as an example, we can use a government ID. In this case, is a passport. So it's uploading the passport to AWS at the back end. So once it is finished sending, it will see whether the passport is valid and it's not expired yet, and then it will say whether it will actually send the report to that particular email address that you said. So once we go to the email and then we open the attachment, you can see that this is my vaccination status, what date it is, and what type of vaccination was done to myself, right? So yeah, so this is where we have an example where we can cater for different audiences to get citizen or government information. So again, Architecture-wise, this is what we use, and this is a bit more lesser. We can add more if required. So for the data scientists, if you look on the up, we have those two data sets from S3, and we use Glue Data Brew to join them together and then output it into S3 for the clean data. For the citizens, you can use, we are leveraging on Amazon Connect, which is AWS contact center solution. At the backend, uses Lex for the chatbot and NLP processing, and the business logic is done with Lambda. How it queries is use Athena to do the in-place query without actually extracting the data out and into another place is done on-prem in that place. And then for the executives, then they can use QuickSight to actually view the data there. All right. So this is how it looks like.
Wow, that's too few of service. I thought you were going to use all 200 rows.
We can if you want, but in this case, no. All right.
Okay. So, so we've shown you a couple of things, right? But there are a couple of key takeaways that we would want, right? So the one is us doing the heavy lifting, right? So we've emphasized on machine learning. We've emphasized on serverless as well. So that's not something that can be seen when you're looking at a BI tool or a data warehousing solution, for example. But those are the ones that actually have a big impact when you're trying to implement something for let's say, government. We also leverage, I mentioned earlier, it's like security is coming as an afterthought, right? So going with that theme, if you have a provider that gives you those security features, being able to scale, the inherent availability, then you become more confident when you're trying to deploy the solutions. And lastly, of course, I'm a solutions architect. Shazli is a solutions architect. We have a lot of solutions architects that would be able to help you out. In fact, outside, we have a booth, Ask the Experts. The three solutions that you've seen is the essays in that booth that actually made it. And we also have other solutions like Moodle on AWS, and we are also working with AWS automatic weather stations, integration with our AWS services. So we are also working on that one. So please visit the booth and ask for any questions that you have here. We will be waiting for your questions. And also, of course, to help the essays out, we want to help you be successful as well. We have a couple of programs like Skill Builder and, of course, AWS certifications, right? And lastly, we would like to thank you for giving us this time and to be able to explain and demonstrate the solutions that we have. Lastly, please put in the survey if you want a taller presenter next year, if you want to take this podium away, or maybe the room is too cold or too warm. Please put them in the feedback. We iterate on all of our activities the same way we do our services, so that next time you'll have a better experience. Thank you so much.
Thank you.